Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoy this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. No posers allowed. High Class Thangs. No Posers Allowed, also known as the Roach Mafia, are an American hip-hop duo with members Tak and Dilk. I was introduced to them via plenty of exposure on the Discord server. Shameless plug, by the way. Go join. Link in the description. But anyway, I am here today to take a look at the group's first album, High Class Thangs, released in June of this year. And let's not waste any more time. What are my thoughts on this album? Let's find out as I review it track by track. We will start with the singles, with which I could only find two of them. The first one being Coach Soldiers, which, if I'm being honest, doesn't really work for me. I do like what's here in the instrumentation, though. There's a lush, beautiful synth, the keys are perky, and the skittering hi-hat is light and feathery. It's a nice beat, but there's a unique quirk to the song. Whenever this bass hits, the mix becomes quieter and kind of falls into this blurry void for a brief second before rebounding. And it's not like a slight change in volume, it's pretty drastic, as if the thuds of the bass almost have this physical impact on the mix of the song. It's a very idiosyncratic experience, one that I really tried to get into, but with that going on for over 4 minutes, each exchange just sucking me in and pulling me back out of this vibe constantly, it's like a roller coaster of a ride I don't really have much of a desire to revisit. And the second and final single, Ricky for the Day, is a really nice bop. I like this track. The beat here is pretty great. There's a mangled cacophony of synths and various sound bites across the track, stuff like stock gun firing, checkmark dings, and sputtering record scratches that I swear I've heard on a few Lil Uzi Vert tracks before. Stuff like this will appear on future tracks in abundance. Then we get to the actual performances here, and I'll say right now, these will not be for everybody. A lot of slurred words, heavy amounts of auto-tune, uncouth flows, mostly distributed by Dilk. Yet at the same time, I feel like this track has a lot of that similar magnetism that Playboi Carti's music had, but this one is just a more rowdy variant of that. Really reminds me of like Cartier God, maybe a little bit of Cemetery as well, but not to the extremes of either, and I think that might be a reason why I like it so much. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener Dior Problems is pretty alright. I'm not crazy about this one, but definitely not something I'm against listening to at all. The beat is again incredible. It's very bright and quirky. The synths feel sunny and almost glisten and twinkle along with the traditional dense bass and hi-hat. It's got a pretty solid vibe to it. Performances were a little bit hit or miss, however, Dilk's singing wasn't my favorite. I've never been a fan of singers who have a more nasally tone and try to hold that note at a higher pitch. Not the most appealing thing for me. His entire verse isn't all of that though, but when it does come on, it's a little bit of a mood killer. Although Tak's verse is awesome, probably one of my favorites on the entire project. It's so smooth and clean, the flow is tight, and I think that autotune is actually used pretty tastefully. Not a favorite song for me overall, but it was not worth completely leaving. Chargin Extra is a Tak solo song. Dilk is nowhere to be seen on this one, and considering I've loved Tak's performances so far, I think he followed those up pretty well. This is a good track. Nothing too crazy done on this one, it just kind of feels like a typical rap song. The beat is standard and the bass is slightly less distorted, yet still has a hearty pound to it. The hi-hat ties things together well, and the synths are very wavy and entrancing. As per mentioned, Tak's performance is great. He switches between several different flows and intensities throughout the song's 2-minute runtime and keeps the song engaging. I don't really have much else to add, this is just a really well done song. Salsa Verde, the shortest track on this record, not even stretching 2 minutes, and this one is probably my least favorite on the record. It's a very similar situation to Coach Soldiers, where that beat is really nice, there's a prominent buzzing synth to add this dense feeling to the beat along with the hi-hat and those quirky little effects. But like Coach Soldiers, this one incorporates that punching of the bass to make the mix get more silent. But what makes this one more irritating to me is that where Coach Soldier's effect was pretty much one and done for a bit, you could still enjoy the beat for that moment. The bass here is constant. The brief moment is even more brief, and I'm just caught in this continuous throbbing loop. And to me, it's just more annoying than anything, which is a shame since Tak and Dilk do a great job over this beat, especially Tak. But this palpitating mix is just not something I'm into at all. Matter of fact, Tooka Baby begins this pretty flawless run that is the back half of this record. I really like this track. Everything here just kind of works for the duo's style. The beat's a bit more energetic. I love the addition of the shrill guitar strums when paired with the typical loud bass and clicking hi-hats, emphasizing the more brash side of the duo. I also like the performances here. Dilk stays to his lower, kind of bratty tone, Tax using his more nasally register, and while those may sound like negative characteristics, I think they both work with the beat well and thankfully don't push to the more irritating side of either. This is a great song. Ho on Meds is one of the 2 tracks on here that I've actively returned to the most, which is especially surprising considering this one is 4 minutes and 43 seconds long. However, I think I can attribute that enjoyability to this song due to how poppy it is. That's not me saying it's a pop song, it's not, but there's a lot of pop elements on here. For one, this hook is crazy infectious. There have been some decent hooks scattered throughout this album so far, but this is the one that just gets lodged in my brain and will not come out. The beat is also surprisingly sanitary and stagnant, at least in comparison. The beat being synced, the bass is pretty upfront, and the hi-hat is muted, only really serves to keep the light beat together. Performances were again great. Tak handles a majority of the tune, and his intoxicated, slurred vibe is pretty mesmerizing. Again, a kind of Playboi Carti effect. Love Dilk's verse too. It's well produced and sounds very clean, kind of having the same vibe as Tak. Great song, a standout for sure. Giddy Up is another song that utilizes that same effect again of the bass making the mix quiet. However, I think this one is one of the most well utilized of that effect for 2 reasons. 1, the switch between quiet and regular isn't as drastic, and 2, the bass is used a bit more sparingly than on Salsa Verde, so the overall effect is minimal, and besides, I just think the song is in general better than the other 2 offenders on here. The synthwaves are captivating, the bass itself is distorted and impactful, the hi-hat is also barely noticeable and mainly replaced by a snare, which I think is a nice change. Also, I haven't really brought this up yet, but on Dior Problems, Ricky for the Day, and this one, the track strangely cut out like 30 seconds before the song is actually finished on streaming, which has no bearings on the enjoyability of the song itself, but it is a little bit infuriating when I think a song is done and it turns out not to be for like another 30 seconds of silence. I mean, aside from that minor nitpick though, the song is good. Casa Bonita yet again uses that silencing bass effect, so you'd probably think I wouldn't care for it, but honestly this is the second of the 2 tracks that I've revisited frequently. This is an amazing song, which really has to do with this energy. I love how loud, booming, and abrasive this one feels, even when quiet. This bass is like thunder, the hi-hat is sporadic, and the synths just add a light garnish of a melody. Tak and Dilk both sound hungry on this track. I especially love Tak's chorus that sounds auto-tune free. I think his normal voice is incredible. It sounds dominant, assertive, ready to tell you in 10 different unique ways how much he's better than you. In fact, Dilk doesn't really seem to use any noticeable auto-tune either, and he also does a fantastic job. He sounds kind of raspy and almost veteran in a way. Really love this track, an album highlight. And finally, the closer, Vintage Ricky, is one of the most bizarre rap songs I've heard in a minute. The percussion and synth feel very steady and almost kind of have a retro feeling to them, until about halfway when the tempo slows down like the bass and the synth are about to get really grimy and sludgy, when instead there's an acoustic guitar. The performances are pretty solid, and the first half features a much more jumpy and eccentric flow and charisma, while the second half is more of a chopped and screwed style with a deep vocal effect that I think blends well with the pseudo-acoustic vibe of it. Also, this is another one that randomly cuts out 30 seconds before the song is done. A little bit annoying, but the song is a unique case on the album. I'm not that crazy about it, it's probably my least favorite out of the back half, but I can really see this one working for a few people. Overall, I was pleasantly surprised by this album. As I mentioned before, this is definitely not for everybody. In fact, I'd say this is a pretty specific niche that would be into this, one that I do kind of fall into. I love the underground aesthetic, the brash and often mind-numbing performances. It kind of feels like Playboi Carti, but just on an insane amount of LSD for the most part. Yeah, I had a fun time with this. I'm feeling a 7 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.